thank you so much for joining us. So Hasib is a managing partner at Dragonfly Capital. And before joining Dragonfly Capital, Hasib was also a partner at Metastable Capital. And Hasib, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thanks for having me, Don. I'm excited to be here.
Right. So yeah, let's just get started. You have been really active in the blockchain domain, and I think you have really a lot of really interesting thoughts about DeFi. So maybe first you can start sharing with the audience here about your take on DeFi. Of course, there's a lot of discussion whether DeFi is a hype, whether the hype is sustainable, and so on. It'll be great to hear your thoughts.
That's a very broad question to start with. Is DeFi sustainable? So I'd say that if you're paying close attention to DeFi right now, you see that there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of crazy valuations, there's a lot of speculation happening in this market. Now, to be clear, this happens every year or so in crypto. Every 2 years, there's some kind of crazy speculative cycle. And by that standard, the DeFi speculation has been relatively muted. If you count up all the market cap from DeFi, it's still less than 5%, or somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5% of the total crypto market cap. So in absolute terms, it's not huge relative to what's going on in crypto. That said, it's clear that there's a lot of frothiness going on in DeFi. So the question is, is what's happening in DeFi, is this real fundamentals? Is there something actually important happening here? Or is this a flash in the pan, speculative, sort of recursive enterprise? And what I'd argue is that
much utility we are really seeing and so on. Right?
Yeah. What I would argue is that DeFi is kind of always what crypto has been about. And let me flesh out what I mean by that. So, if you sort of trace back the history of where crypto came from, right? Of course, it started with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin really is digital. It was the first instantiation of digital money. And the very first thing that people wanted after they had Bitcoin was they wanted to expand Bitcoin by adding more opcodes, right? Because the Bitcoin script is very limited. And so you had things like Blackcoin and Feathercoin and Counterparty and all these different very, very tiny additions to make Bitcoin more expressive. And all of those ideas really culminated in Ethereum. And Ethereum sort of became this generalization that, okay, once you have money, I don't just want to send money back and forth. That's cool, that's fine. But really, I want to have arbitrary agreements about that money. I want to have contracts, right? And so we went from Bitcoin sort of being the base numeraire that got reinvented to getting contracts. And once you have contracts, what's the next thing that you want to do? Almost immediately after, the next thing they wanted to do was fundraising, which was ICOs, right? So that's capital formation on the blockchain. So we went from money to contracts to capital formation. And then what I think we now call DeFi is basically just the generalization of all the other things that people want to do once you have those primitives, right? Once you have capital formation, you might want to do lending, and you might want to do trading, you might want to do derivatives, you might want to do synthetic assets, and all of this universe of financial applications that can be invented using these core primitives. It all started with what people originally wanted to do, which was to make money, right? Once you create money, you create contracts, you create all the other things that contracts enable. That thread of innovation is the same thread that started with Bitcoin. So I think DeFi is really important. I think it's what this whole thing has been about from the very beginning, which is disrupting financial technology and making it open, making it permissionless, making it free for anybody to use and to innovate on. So I think that's important. Should this token or that token be worth $1 billion? I don't know. But I think that the core primitive of DeFi is really important, and it's here to stay.
Right, great. Yeah, thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts. I totally agree. I think if you look at blockchain, so first of all, what blockchain is good for. So first of all, it really is about you building native assets on the blockchain, and then once you have these native assets, then it's about what these native assets can do. And so very naturally, I think, right, that's why finance is essentially, I would say, the first application domain. And that's really natural and native to blockchain, is because you can do a lot just with the native assets on the blockchain already. Whereas in the future, we hope to bring more assets onto the blockchain, bring them from the real world. But that will take much longer than the native assets.
That's right. So completely agree.
Okay. And then what do you think that's missing in DeFi currently?
Oh, so much. I mean, you just mentioned, real world assets. That's one big thing that's missing. The only real world asset today in DeFi is the US dollar. And there's a lot of it, that's one of the most, the most traded asset in crypto and in DeFi is the US dollar. But there's still a dearth of currencies, a dearth of, things like bonds or equities or other assets and commodities that people would naturally want to trade. I think some of the things that are really missing from DeFi are things like uncollateralized lending. So right now we have over-collateralized lending, but of course, the large swath of especially consumer lending is uncollateralized or under-collateralized. And there's no real story for that right now in DeFi because there's no identity. And without identity, you really can't get, uncollateralization or credit, which is another term for the same thing. Beyond that, there are a lot of pieces that are missing of, for example, like anything that requires a central limit order book in DeFi doesn't really work today. Sure, there are a few applications, a few exchanges that are doing some volume, but the reality is that Ethereum's throughput is so constrained and so limited that it makes central limit order books very infeasible. They're just too expensive to operate on a very low throughput blockchain, which is one of the reasons why we really need next generation blockchains like Oasis that can support much higher throughput to support these kind of more conventional financial primitives in a way. I think many people have heard of Uniswap or AMMs or automated market makers. In a way, they're really clever adaptations to the incredibly constrained environment that is Ethereum 1.0. It's a way to make sort of things that emulate order books work inside a very kind of sort of low compute environment. But once you unlock the ability to use much more compute than Ethereum offers, you can just create much more efficient primitives for buying, selling, trading, creating things than you can today in Ethereum.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Yes, so I completely agree. And that's also why, like you mentioned, at Oasis, we are building this new platform to really achieve greater scalability and adding privacy protection, and that even actually can help with this under-collateralized lending to help achieve these new capabilities and push DeFi to the next level.
Right. So I had some questions for you actually that
that's great.
Would be very interesting for the audience to hear. So I'm an investor in Oasis, and I actually invested in you guys multiple times from when I was at Metastable into again at Dragonfly. So you guys can't get away from me. Yeah. I'm incredibly excited. You guys are now in your mainnet beta, and there's it's been such a long journey to get to here. Of what kind of applications would be enabled by the Oasis blockchain that couldn't exist, for example, on Ethereum?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a great question. So with the Oasis platform, so one, as we mentioned, with this paradigm architecture, we can enable much greater scalability. And another important advantage of the Oasis platform is that it is the first blockchain platform that combines secure computing and this distributed ledger to provide privacy protection in the blockchain platform. And the combination of scalability and this privacy protection by combining secure computing and the distributed ledger enables new use cases and new paradigms that couldn't be done before in previous platforms. So let me just give you one example. So one application domain that we're really excited about is this new paradigm that we call data tokenization. So people talk a lot in blockchain about tokenization, and in general, they tokenize, for example, the traditional financial assets and so on. But as we know, that data is the key driver of modern economy, and there's a huge value in data. And there has been estimates that if we look at data economy compared to the traditional just finance, the size of the data economy is orders of magnitudes bigger than what's just considered as traditional finance. And I think even going beyond DeFi, the next really exciting and huge domain that we really want to enable and tackle is this data economy. So our platform is uniquely well suited to enable this data tokenization and also leading to what we call a responsible data economy. So let me just talk a little bit what the data tokenization means, right? So basically, so today it's very hard for users to maintain control to their data and rights to data. Basically, there's not even a clear notion of users' rights to data. Whereas in our platform, by combining secure computing and the distributed ledger, we can enable this new concept of data tokenization. So first of all, the distributed ledger enables users to provide an immutable log to users' rights to data, and also the policies of how they want their data to be utilized. And also it can provide an immutable log to even for how the user's data has been used. And by combining with the secure computing, so secure computing enables data to be utilized in a way that essentially even as the data is being computed on, the data privacy is being protected. So for example, the data consumer will only be able to compute over the data in the secure execution environment, and will now be able to get a copy of the raw data outside of the secure execution environment. So this way we can enable data to be used, but at the same time still enable users' rights to data is being maintained. Users can still maintain control of their data. And what does this mean? So if users cannot maintain control of their data, for example, every time if somebody computes over their data, that data consumer just gets a copy of user's data, then user basically loses control of their data, because now the data consumer has a copy of the data. They can then go ahead and do whatever they want to with their data, because user can no longer control the data. And hence that also significantly limits the value that users can extract from their data, because once the data is used once, then the data consumer can then just take the data and do whatever they want. Then users, of course, it's difficult for users to maintain value from on that data. But in our case, our platform enables users to protect, to maintain control of their data and rights to their data, and hence this is the necessary components and ingredients for users to be able to extract more value out of their data. Because now, when that data consumer, another data consumer that needs to use the data, they still need to get the consent, the permission from the user, and the user can ask for value in return. And the value, of course, can come in different forms as well. So I think this is a huge new enabler to enable a very different data economy than today. In today's data economy, users really don't, again, they don't have control over their data. In some sense, they have very little power. Whereas in this new paradigm, what Oasis platform can enable is actually retaining the power to the user. So now the user has the power and hence be able to gain more value out of their data. And I think this will actually also lead to better usage of data as well. Then now users potentially can help better solve the data silo problems, make it easier for data to be utilized for societal benefits, and also to provide better protection for users' data privacy and provide them with the better, fair value and so on as well.
So that's a very convincing story of the value of data tokenization. I want to ask you to paint a picture for me. Let's say it's 5 years in the future. Oasis has taken over the world. What is my experience going to be like in a world where data is tokenized and I can retain my rights to it as a user? What is it going to be like for me to interact with Facebook or with Google or with this service or my financial institution? Paint a picture for me.
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, let me give you a concrete example of something that we actually offer today already. So in partnership with the genomic company, Nebula Genomics, we actually just launched a beta the product service to help users maintain control for their genomic data. So with this new product and service, actually this will be the first time where users become owners of their genomic data, and at the same time to enable their genomic data to be utilized in a privacy-preserving way. So people may be familiar with companies like 23andMe, which provides genomic data analysis to users. But in these cases, oftentimes, even these companies themselves cite slowdown in consumer adoption, given the consumers' privacy concerns of how their genomic data may be used and so on. So with the Oasis platform, again, in partnership with the genomic company here, we can, so users will maintain control of their genomic data. Their genomic data is stored in encrypted form. And users can specify how they want the data to be utilized. For example, they can say that they want to give consent to this genomic company to do genomic analysis over their data. Then in this case, so users' rights to their genomic data and also their policies of how the genomic data can be utilized is logged on the Oasis platform, the blockchain platform. And then also once, for example, the genomic company gets consent from users to run genomic analysis on users' data, then in this case, Nebula can actually run their genomic analysis within the secure execution environments provided by the Oasis platform, and they won't be able to do anything else. So, for example, they can only compute over users' data within the secure execution environments, and they can't do anything else with the users' data. So this way, and also every time when they use users' data, the usage will also be logged on the Oasis platform, and the users can go audit themselves as well. So this is an example where users maintain control of their genomic data, and they can still benefit from their genomic data to get the results from the genomic analysis and so on. And also then, for example, if a pharmaceutical company wants to get users' genomic data to do research, then users can also see whether they want to consent and agree to that, and then they can have a certain rewards in compensation and so on, or they want to just have their data, donate their data for general medical research, but in a way that's done with guarantee of their privacy protection, and now have the data utilized for other things, for example. So now you can envision this will actually enable a completely new way, a new paradigm, how users can take ownership and control of their genomic data. And that's just one example. And of course, there's medical data that goes beyond genomic data. And another domain that we're really excited about is financial data. So for example, we actually have interfaces with the financial services APIs like Plaid and so on. So today, actually, most users are not aware that through this kind of APIs, actually, a lot of companies are getting users' data, users' financial data, for example. In certain cases, maybe anonymized under the umbrella of anonymization and so on, which can still be re-identified. And users are really losing control of their financial data, how it's being utilized, and oftentimes users may not even be aware of it. And so we hope that with this type of technology, it can also enable these other segments in financing, IoT, in many other domains. Essentially, again, users can maintain stronger control of their data. And then, so now when someone wants to, of course, for example, users' financial data can be really valuable. It also can contain users' purchase history and so on. Like a lot of companies may want to provide, ads or whatever, like other services to users based on this. But now, given that users actually have control of the data, they can decide how the data can be utilized, who can utilize the data, and so on. So I think a lot of the issues that users are seeing today can right, we actually, for the first time, can have opportunity to provide very different solutions and can really change the power dynamics.
So in short, the social contract between users and companies will go from don't be evil to can't be evil.
Exactly. That's a really good, right? That's a really good way to putting it.
Fair enough. You know, we were just talking about DeFi, and I would love to hear from your end how Oasis enables new DeFi applications with Oasis's architecture.
Great. Yeah, thanks. So with Oasis' greater scalability and privacy protection, it can really help bring DeFi to the next level. So one, we can enable much more scalable DeFi. As I mentioned earlier, the Oasis platform, we also support paradigm that's fully backwards compatible to Ethereum EVM. And so it's really easy to run, for example, the current Ethereum DeFi applications on the Oasis platform. So for example, again, through with our community members, for example, Second State, we actually, so the Uniswap actually runs on Oasis. So there is an Oasis version of Uniswap. Essentially, the code is the same, basically. And instead of running on Ethereum, it just runs on the Oasis platform. And people can actually go try it out today. And there actually very soon will be some competitions that, and hackathons that will be launched to have users try it out. And in this case, we can provide much greater scalability for Uniswap and for this kind of DeFi applications, and much more improved user experience and cheaper costs and so on. So that's the scalability side. And also with the privacy protection, we can really enable what we call private DeFi. With private DeFi, we can enable, for example, instead of just relying on over-collateralized lending, we can actually enable under-collateralized lending. So by utilizing users' data in a privacy-preserving way, the application can then actually compute, for example, risk scores, credit scores for the borrower, and then these scores can be used by the lending services to decide how to do the lending, and hence enable a much greater market for lending with this under-collateralized lending. And also with the privacy protection, we can provide essentially provide better protection for sensitive information in the various DeFi applications. So for example, in the traditional finance, it's unimaginable that a lot of these financial details will be in public, right? Because a lot of it is proprietary information for traditional financial institutions and so on. It's really sensitive information that they would not want to reveal in public, in a fully public ledger and so on. So with the privacy protection for the Oasis platform, it can really help protect sensitive information like this. And also here, the privacy protection is not also just to protect this type of sensitive information. It also can help reduce attacks. For example, right now, on Ethereum in DeFi, because everything is public, attackers can do front-running attacks. They can do a lot of these attacks because they can see all the transactions. They can see what users want to do, and then they can run ahead of users and so on, and also other types of attacks. And as we enable private DeFi, we can actually help eliminate or mitigate many of these type of attacks also. And hence, we are really excited that with the greater scalability and privacy protection, the Oasis platform can really help bring DeFi to the next level and to more mainstream.
Amazing.
Hi everyone, this is Luca from Oasis. I lead the DeFi efforts at Oasis, and today is really great to have Jeremy from Balancer Protocol with us. So Jeremy, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at Balancer?
Sure. So I'm Jeremy Musigi, Head of Growth at Balancer Labs. A little about my background. I've been a crypto investor and researcher since 2013 as founder and CIO of Immutable Capital. And I've also previously been founder of two tech companies, Revenue.com and Sesh, which both were acquired. And at Balancer, I, in many ways, and through wearing many different hats, I support the community-driven growth and expansion of the Balancer protocol.
So thanks, Jeremy. Do you want to tell us a little bit of what Balancer is, what kind of problems that it solves, and what is an automated market maker in general, and what role it plays in the general DeFi ecosystem, and why that is important for the entire development?
Sure. So first off, none of this conversation is financial or investment advice of any kind, just to get that out of the way. But I'll start with like the concept of an AMM, or automated market maker, which is kind of complicated, but it's a type of decentralized exchange architecture. So if you think about the stock market, which runs on an order book model, which means that there's a system that pairs buyers and sellers together in order for a trade to happen. An AMM is a different model where actually there's a smart contract that acts as a partner in every trade. So every trade that you make on an AMM platform, you're actually trading with a smart contract as opposed to a counterparty or another person. So and to elaborate on that, so these smart contracts, they contain what's called a liquidity pool. And a liquidity pool is like a stockpile of tokens that ensures that the token that you want to buy, for example, is sufficiently available so that you can make the trade that you want to make. So you're always selling one token for another token, and whatever you are looking to get in return needs to be sufficiently in supply. So that's what these liquidity pools ensure. And this makes it so that no one is stuck with an unfilled order for a long period of time. And it also has this effect where the more liquidity there is for an asset, the more resistant that asset becomes to price shocks, and the more stable then the prices are. So those are some of the general concepts of an AMM, the general reasons why AMMs exist. Balancer in particular is an AMM that is designed specifically to have very high flexibility, and that allows it to serve as a financial primitive for many different use cases. So the Balancer protocol has some core features, such as, I believe we don't want to get too technical here, so I'm going to keep it high level, but you can let me know if you want me to drill further on anything. But in general, sort of in the core use cases or the core features of Balancer, we have liquidity providers who can be anyone who provides basically deposits assets into Balancer's liquidity pools. They're held in these smart contracts, and they sort of help the whole system run. And the benefit of doing that is as an investor who puts their assets in a liquidity pool is basically getting an auto rebalancing index fund that pays you fees for holding your money, basically. And additionally, we have a liquidity mining program on the Balancer protocol right now. So liquidity providers for many of the Balancer pools are also receiving the BAL token, which we can get more into detail about what that is later. So that's how liquidity providers can interact with Balancer. On the other side, you You have traders, of course. So Balancer acts as a decentralized exchange. So traders come to Balancer to make trades with high liquidity and with minimal slippage, meaning that they would get the best price possible. And that's what Balancer is really designed to do. And the third type of user that will interact with Balancer is arbitragers. So, and again, keeping it high level, one of the things that is crucial to the design, the functionality of Balancer is that all liquidity pools on Balancer must maintain a certain set balance. And when they are out of balance, which occurs naturally as trades are made, that actually opens up an opportunity for an arbitrager to come in and profit from those imbalances, and by doing that, they actually put those pools back into balance. So, that's kind of like the core functionality, which is the liquidity pools and how they serve functions to different types of users. But really, Balancer is actually a lot more than that. Balancer is it's a building block for DeFi, and our decentralized exchange not only supports direct trading through like the Balancer interface, but it also supports dApps throughout the DeFi ecosystem that need liquidity, and that can be, for example, DEX aggregators or smart wallets that allow you to make trades or different types of transactions within their interface, but on the back end they're sending that through Balancer. And then we also have what are called smart pools on Balancer, which unlock really like endless use cases. I feel like today, which is still very early in Balancer's life as a protocol, we've really only kind of discovered as a community some of these use cases, but there are already some really exciting ones. So I'll give you some examples. There's a team called PyDAO, which has used Balancer's infrastructure to create managed index funds, which they offer to the market in the form of a tokenized asset. And that tokenized asset that you can buy is a way for you to hold a diversified investment in a portfolio of different assets just through one token. And they've created different types of portfolios, different types of these like managed index funds that are represented by different PyDAO tokens. And all of that is made possible by the Balancer protocol. And all of that is built on top of the Balancer protocol. Another example is there are some really popular dApps such as 1inch Exchange and Zapper.fi. Both of those teams integrated their technology with Balancer so that while users are on their platform using the various functions and features that they offer, some of the features that they can also interact with is to directly make trades through Balancer, and also to directly add or remove liquidity from pools that are on Balancer within the interface, within the experience of that application itself. And I'll give you a couple more examples. There's a team called Perpetual Protocol, which used Balancer recently to actually conduct a token sale. They were launching their brand new PERP token, and they did this through what's called an LBP, or a liquidity bootstrapping pool. Without getting too complicated, that is a certain configuration of a Balancer pool that lets you set a specific window of time where you are allowing people to buy your token through a token sale mechanism. And this allows that process to happen in a way that's very transparent and fair, so that all of the members of the community of a crypto protocol have a chance to invest and participate and be an active owner in the network. And I'll just give one last one, which is smart treasuries. kind of mind-blowing, really. It's an idea that came from one of our lead investors at Placeholder, Joel Venegro. He wrote a really interesting blog about this recently on the Placeholder blog, but the general idea is that you can actually use a balancer pool to act as a treasury fund for your crypto protocol, and to manage that, you manage your treasury assets in a way that best optimizes the liquidity of your token and the way that you sort of spend and manage your funds. So definitely recommend looking into that, but I think it would be too long for this conversation.
Yeah, and that's great. Thanks for this explanation. I think it's really great that you explain both how Balancer solves a lot of problems related to traders and people who have that immediate incentive, and also at the same time serves developers who are trying to embed a new set of DeFi applications that are powered by protocols. At Oasis, the thing that I want to say here, we love to work with companies that have this level of connotation, because people who will come and build application on the Oasis network, the one thing they really care about is finding places that and a set of preset integrations that somehow will enable the next generation of DeFi applications that they want to build. So we feel this is really in line with what Oasis tries to accomplish. So moving to the aspects that you are finding challenging, or that Balancer is finding challenging, in terms of like solving the main problems that you are facing today, I'd be particularly interested in understanding what kind of problems you guys are tackling on a daily basis, with a particular reference to what do you think is needed to bring more and more users to DeFi, and where do you see the next wave of DeFi growing, let's say?
Yeah, so I think, Balancer really thrives when the developer community, like startups, enterprises, entrepreneurs, and all different kinds of people involved in software development and smart contract development get involved and use our infrastructure to build useful applications. And that's a big reason for our growth thus far, is how different teams have really looked at our technology and come up with a way that they can use it to either build something or to enhance something that they built. So, some of our top focuses right now are, number one, making it as cost efficient as possible for traders to execute trades on Balancer. And traders can be, individual people, but they can also be applications, they can be systems that are, trading tokens through some part of their underlying functionality. So that's the first thing. And second thing is making it as easy as possible to integrate with Balancer and to build on Balancer. So, we're really addressing that in how we are designing Balancer V2. So right now, Balancer V1 is the first version of Balancer, which is currently live today. And in V2, we're making some changes to the technical architecture of the system, which will really optimize the cost of each transaction by optimizing the amount of gas that's required, also making major improvements in the ease of integration with Balancer. And but I also think another aspect of the question that you're asking is, like, in the bigger grand ecosystem, the bigger picture of DeFi, what's needed, what needs to happen in order for growth to continue and to accelerate beyond its current rate. So I think the first most obvious one is scalability and high throughput are really crucial requirements for DeFi to really reach its potential, and that's something that's really holding DeFi back right now on the Ethereum blockchain. And so, despite all the things that are great about Ethereum, it's really struggling on the scalability side, and that's something that needs to be solved one way or another. And of course, there are many different solutions that are being worked on and proposed, and there are other teams like Oasis Network that are offering a solution that could potentially be that alternative. And I think, we need to continue to improve the user experience. We need to continue to improve the ease of use of DeFi applications. I think that as a space in general, as an industry, we've been making great progress on that side, but that is something that certainly needs to continue, and many other factors, but those are two important ones.
That's great to hear. I agree with you. Clearly, scalability is possibly the most obvious one. We also have an interesting angle of scalability. Often is sort of mistaken with number of transactions only, but reality is that the effect that not having scalability, let me say this with other words, not having scalability is causing some side effects that are strongly limiting participation of a bigger pool of people. I can think of transaction costs, of course, directly, but also the ability of engaging partners that already have huge distribution. And maybe one thing I can think of is more technologically advanced fintech companies, let's say. They cannot even touch DeFi because it would be really, really impossible. So we really believe that is one of the aspects. We clearly think that privacy also plays a role there. And when we think of privacy at Oasis, we generally think of privacy as a combination of mainly two aspects. The first one is the ability of protecting trades and protecting commercial interests and everything that has to do with putting, not revealing strategies and all these aspects. But also the second part of our definition of privacy has to do with the ability of building this data liquidity layer, if you want to call it like that is controlled by the user, and it's put at the service of protocols on top. And here we can think of credit score, decentralized and queryable credit score, or some level of reputational system. And again, it would be a completely separate conversation. But I wanted to get your sense on whether the role of privacy in DeFi is something we should be expecting as one of the engines of the next generation of DeFi apps.
Yeah, I think on a philosophical level, personally, I feel that privacy is a critical human right. I think everyone should have the option to protect their privacy. And I think it's great to see that, the Oasis team has made that such a priority in the fundamental design of the Oasis network. I think that's, a really great property of the protocol. And I think that, as you mentioned, there are certain really important use cases in society that really, probably wouldn't make sense on a blockchain or on a protocol that is not, that does not offer the option for privacy. Privacy of data, privacy of transactions. I think credit score is a great example. I think when it comes to health information, health records, that's also something that we may eventually see being brought onto the blockchain, but there needs to be privacy protections for that to really be done right, and for people to feel comfortable with it. Certainly that's something that I would want to keep private. So yeah, I think layer one solutions that offer privacy can certainly take the lead in onboarding those use cases that are very sensitive to privacy into the decentralized blockchain-based world, maybe most quickly, and take advantage of that opportunity, while other blockchains that are fully public, maybe don't have a straightforward solution for that.
Yeah, thanks for that. We also noticed that, clearly we echo everything you just said. We also noticed that the absence of privacy, or maybe the presence of full transparency, let's say the other way around, has the side effect of incentivizing behaviors of maybe more, let's call them self-motivated, perhaps miners and traders, that sort of take advantage of this component of Ethereum to, I don't know, front run or other behaviors that may not be working in the interest of, let's say, the masses. So we also think that privacy, on top of being a human right and on top of being very relevant for a lot of applications, as you just said, which again is exactly why we exist. But we also notice like this recent tendency of the ability of using privacy as an enabler for protecting against some of the behaviors that the community in general doesn't like, right? So going to the joint grant that Oasis and Balancer are issuing, and here, for people who are not familiar with that, given that we just announced it, Oasis and Balancer are issuing a joint grant to develop and experiment how Balancer would perform on the Oasis network. So I was curious to hear more from you, like what are your expectations, and let's say if you can elaborate more about this idea of issuing this grant and working with Oasis to make that happen.
Sure. So yeah, first some background on the Balancer Ecosystem Fund, which is making this possible. This is really a vehicle for supporting projects that we think can help grow and enhance the Balancer ecosystem. So it's such an important part of building the long-term future and growth of Balancer. And the way that it works, sort of briefly, is the Balancer community votes to approve batches of grants. And once we have a live batch of grants that's been approved, we then really open up to the community for proposals, and anyone can make a proposal for a project that they would like to build, that they think would bring value to the Balancer ecosystem, and to receive funding for it. And it's a really amazing win-win situation where members of the community, and this is anyone, anyone who's interested in Balancer can be a member of the Balancer community, and anyone who has an idea can really get involved and propose something. On the opposite side, there are also specific ideas that have already been that the community or the Balancer Labs team has discussed or come up with that we think would be really awesome for someone to build. So we also will be soon getting more involved in offering bounties for a specific project with a specific definition, and putting that out to the community for people to come in and basically claim that bounty and take on that project. So and as far as the status of the grant program, we just completed our first batch, and we'll be making a proposal to the Balancer community to approve a second batch very soon, which would be a really exciting opportunity to continue to promote growth in this way. And specifically, the Oasis grant is an opportunity for us to provide funding for community development of Balancer on the Oasis network. And this is something that we are excited to put out there, so that teams that have the expertise to make this happen can come in and offer that expertise to win this project, to complete specified milestones that Balancer and Oasis together will define for these projects and for the specific features, functions, etc. that we would be looking for. And this is an opportunity for us to, as you said, experiment and learn from how Balancer performs on Oasis, leveraging its unique properties that are different from the Ethereum protocol where Balancer primarily is. And this is like kind of a combination for us of a research project today, but also an investment in the future. If Oasis can really grow and build a strong DeFi ecosystem, then Balancer can play a role in that and helping bringing liquidity on chain, and that would be something really exciting.
Yeah, likewise. This is exactly why I think Balancer and Oasis got together. Like there was this mutual vision of issuing a grant to the community and involving the community in the development of this protocol on the Oasis. I think it's been great working with you guys because you've been very open about trying to support, I mean, clearly if the community approves that, but try to support the development and try to support the company that is going to come and build this integration, providing your expertise and maybe like helping in a few very important elements that will significantly speed up the development. On our side, we also have our community grant program that is meant to like foster and support early stage builders. So I think the mutual interest there in order to A, build Balancer on Oasis, B, learn from the privacy needs, the privacy aspects, the scalability benefits, and all this like package that can serve Balancer with a new set of properties, as I just said, I think is extremely exciting for us. And that was the reason why we invested a lot of energy in this, because we thought the alignment of intents was extremely like strong and powerful. So thanks a lot for supporting that. I bet everyone is really excited to move this forward. So I think we are almost out of time. I wanted to ask you, what's next for DeFi? I would have asked you what's next for Balancer, but you already referenced that before with the Balancer V2. We're all very excited to see that coming to life. Maybe like a closing thought on what's next for DeFi and what do you think is going to happen in the next period of time?
Yeah, so I think that probably definitely one of the big areas for evolution in DeFi is governance, decentralized governance. I think that during this last year or so, a lot of really interesting progress has been made, and projects have really gone out and pushed the limits on pushing towards a more decentralized future and putting more and more power into the hands of the community to make decisions in deciding the future of these protocols each day. So I think that I'm very excited about that. I also think that it's still very early. I think there's a lot of research, a lot of learning, a lot of experimentation, a lot of mistakes that will generally are going to happen in the ecosystem and that we'll all learn from, so that we can continue to iterate and improve on how we handle decentralized governance. As I mentioned before, scaling issues are top of the list of priorities to be solved in DeFi. And I think, overall, I'm expecting growth to continue. We've seen so much new liquidity, so much new capital flow into DeFi during this recent boom cycle. And, even after things calm down, a lot of that new liquidity has remained, which shows you that there's real growth happening. This is not a, you know, a flash that, you know, happens and then disappears. This is like legitimate progress. So I think that's all, you know, stuff to be really excited about.
I agree. I think DeFi became stronger. I was personally not a big fan of that slide total number of dollars locked in DeFi. I didn't think it was like a super great representation of the growth of DeFi because it was too attached to the dollar value and growth and not to. It's much more important, which is there's been waves of DeFi, and no matter what, liquidity has been there. People haven't pulled back. The growth is real. The growth is there. And I think we're all excited because this is probably like the very first moment where DeFi is proving to be like maybe stronger than what some sort of people or skeptics were actually thinking. So that's extremely excited. We're all in this together. We'll make this industry definitely more and more advanced as we speak and as we enable more and more collaborations. We're very excited to move this to the next steps. Thanks a lot for this early engagement, and we're looking forward to the next steps. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you. Good to speak with you, Luca.
Thank you.